Did you know that something as simple as the way you sleep tonight could quietly set you up for a stroke before sunrise? Without pain, without warning, and without a single sign that anything is wrong? It sounds unbelievable, almost impossible. Yet, for millions of Americans over 60, this hidden danger unfolds every night in complete silence. You close your eyes feeling normal, safe, and ready for rest. But while you sleep, the aging blood vessels in your neck and brain must battle gravity, poor alignment, low oxygen, nighttime blood pressure spikes, and positions that seem harmless but aren't. By morning, everything may have changed. You wake up confused. Your words don't come out right. One side of your face feels heavy. Your arm refuses to lift. And in that moment, you realize, too late, that the one thing you never questioned, your sleeping position, was quietly working against you. As a doctor who has seen countless seniors walk into the ER thinking they had just slept wrong, I can tell you, most nighttime strokes don't happen by chance. They happen because no one warned you. Tonight, that changes. Let's begin. Before we dive in, if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you hit that button and turn on the bell so you never miss another health tip made just for you. If you enjoy this video, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0 to let me know how I can make better content for you. 1. Sleeping flat on your back with no pillow. Supine head level. For countless Americans over 60, lying flat on the back with no pillow feels natural, almost comforting. Many tell me, "Doctor, it keeps my spine straight," or "It's how I slept my whole life." But what most older adults don't realize is that as the body ages, sleeping completely flat becomes a quiet threat, a slow, unseen danger unfolding in the dark when you are least able to protect yourself. What once felt harmless at 40 can become deeply risky at 70 because the vascular system simply doesn't behave the same anymore. When the head is level with the heart, gravity no longer helps drain venous blood from the brain. This isn't a small change, it's a physiological shift that becomes more dramatic with age. After 60, the vessels in your neck stiffen, the valves weaken, and the natural elasticity that once kept blood moving smoothly begins to fade. Lying flat creates a bottleneck effect. Blood moves into the brain easily through stronger arteries, but struggles to exit through aging veins that must now push upward against gravity. Over several hours of sleep, blood can slow, pool, and stagnate, especially during the early morning hours when the body naturally experiences a rise in blood pressure. And here is where the real danger forms. Slow moving blood becomes thicker. Stagnant blood becomes unstable. This stillness sets the perfect conditions for tiny blood clots to appear, clots that don't make a sound, don't cause pain, and give no warning. Then, when your blood pressure surges near dawn, as it does for nearly every older adult, that clot can break loose. In a matter of seconds, it becomes a silent projectile traveling upward, lodging into a narrow artery in the brain. What follows is what every neurologist fears: the sudden blockage that triggers a stroke, leaving you powerless before you even open your eyes. I have seen this countless times in American hospitals. Men and women who went to bed feeling completely normal, who expected to wake up and drink their morning coffee, only to be found by a spouse confused, unable to speak, or with one arm limp at their side. These are the strokes that steal independence without warning, the ones that happen out of nowhere. Yet they rarely come out of nowhere at all. They come from nights spent in positions the aging brain can no longer tolerate. And this risk becomes even greater if you live with high blood pressure, clogged carotid arteries, atrial fibrillation, sleep apnea, or if you take medications that lower nighttime blood pressure. Even mild dehydration before bed increases the thickness of your blood while you sleep, making clot formation even more likely when you lie flat. For a healthy 30-year-old, the body compensates. For a 70-year-old, compensation is slower, weaker, and far more fragile. The solution is simple but powerful. Elevate your head. A wedge pillow or two medium firm pillows can reduce intracranial pressure, help blood drain more efficiently, and maintain better oxygen delivery through the night. This small change does not just improve comfort, it protects the very organ that holds your memories, personality, and ability to think. But if sleeping flat seems dangerous, wait until you discover what happens when older adults sleep face down, with the neck twisted sharply to one side, a position that can choke off blood flow to the brain in ways even more alarming. If you're still watching and finding these insights helpful, please comment number 1 below to let me know you're with me. Now let's move on to point number 2. 2. Sleeping face down, prone position. Sleeping face down is one of those habits many older Americans carry with them from childhood. Some say it feels grounding, others say it calms back pain, and many simply never questioned it. But the human body changes after 60 in ways most people never imagine, and what once felt comforting can slowly become one of the most dangerous sleeping positions for the aging brain. When you lie face down, your head cannot stay neutral. You're forced to twist your neck sharply to one side just to breathe. For a younger body, this strain is unpleasant but manageable. For an older body, one with stiffer arteries, weaker joints, and reduced oxygen reserves, the consequences can be far more severe. When the neck rotates deeply, the vertebral arteries, the delicate vessels running along the spine that deliver oxygen-rich blood to the back of your brain, become partially compressed. Even a modest reduction in this flow can starve areas responsible for balance, coordination, and basic awareness. But in seniors, the stakes are even higher. With age, arteries lose their elasticity, becoming like old rubber hoses that kink easily. A twisted neck in the night is all it takes to reduce vital blood flow for hours, and the brain, especially an older brain, cannot tolerate long periods of reduced circulation. Meanwhile, the way your chest sinks when lying face down restricts lung expansion. You breathe more shallowly without knowing it. Oxygen drops quietly. Carbon dioxide builds up. Older adults, particularly those with sleep apnea, heart disease, COPD, or excess nighttime medications, do not wake up when this happens. The body doesn't alert you. It doesn't shake you awake. Instead, it tries to compensate by raising your blood pressure and heart rate in the early morning hours. That sudden tension in narrowed vessels is the exact environment where blood thickens, stagnates, and forms blood clots that can slip into the arteries feeding your brain. And when those clots break loose, when circulation is already unstable and oxygen is already low, that is when it triggers strokes, silent, devastating strokes that appear without warning. I've spoken to countless families who found a loved one early in the morning, lying just slightly twisted in bed, barely responsive, their face drooping, their speech slurred. They always say the same thing. Everything was fine at bedtime. But inside the brain, nothing was fine. The prone position had quietly disrupted blood flow for hours, giving a clot all the opportunity it needed to grow and travel. One patient I'll never forget was Mr. Ralph Henderson, a 78-year-old Vietnam veteran from Indiana. He told me he slept on his stomach his entire life. It makes me feel secure, he said during a routine exam. His daughter found him one winter morning unable to lift his right arm and speaking in short, broken sounds. Imaging showed a stroke in the cerebellum, exactly the region starved when the vertebral arteries are compressed overnight. His blood work revealed dehydration and thickened blood, and when we examined his neck, the arteries showed age related narrowing that made him especially vulnerable. The prone position didn't cause his stroke alone, but it created the perfect storm that allowed it to happen. This is why I tell every senior patient your sleeping position must evolve as your body evolves. Lying face down at 25 is not the same as lying face down at 75. The aging brain cannot handle long periods of twisted arteries, low oxygen, and increased morning blood pressure. The risks are real, and the consequences can be irreversible. If sleeping face down has been your habit, consider this your warning and your chance to change course. Side sleeping with proper alignment is safer. Slight elevation is safer. Anything that protects your neck and preserves steady blood flow is safer. And if you think this is alarming, wait until you hear about the habit millions of older Americans do for comfort, pulling a heavy blanket over the head, a habit far more dangerous than most seniors ever realize. 3. Sleeping with a heavy blanket over the head. For many older Americans, pulling a blanket over the head at night is not just a habit, it's a familiar comfort that began in childhood. Maybe it helped block the noise of a busy household years ago. Maybe it kept out the draft in a cold Midwestern winter. Or maybe it simply made you feel safe, wrapped in warmth and darkness. But what once felt harmless when you were young becomes something far more dangerous with age, especially after 60, when the body's ability to regulate oxygen, circulation, and blood flow becomes more fragile than most people realize. When you sleep with a heavy blanket covering your face, you create a small pocket of air that slowly becomes depleted of oxygen and filled with carbon dioxide. In your 20s or 30s, your lungs and brain could tolerate this gradual change. Your oxygen levels dropped only slightly, and your blood vessels adjusted quickly. But aging changes everything. The lungs stiffen, breathing becomes shallower. The heart pumps less forcefully, and the brain, already sensitive to even mild drops in oxygen, must suddenly struggle to function in an environment it was never meant to endure. Inside that small dark space beneath the blanket, the air becomes stale. Oxygen levels fall lower than you think. Carbon dioxide rises quietly, almost silently. As the oxygen drops, your blood becomes thicker, more concentrated, less able to move smoothly through aging arteries. And when thickened blood slows down inside the delicate vessels of the brain, it forms blood clots, tiny, silent obstructions that wait for the early morning surge of blood pressure to strike. When that surge hits, the clot can suddenly break free, travel upward, and it triggers strokes that appear without warning the moment you wake. And that is what makes this habit so frightening. You don't feel the oxygen dropping. You don't sense the carbon dioxide rising. You simply sleep, unaware that your brain is quietly suffocating through the night. Many seniors who experience mild morning confusion, headaches, dizziness, or difficulty focusing never imagine these symptoms might be coming from something as simple and as avoidable as sleeping under a blanket. I have seen too many cases in hospitals across the United States where older adults were found early in the morning barely responsive, their oxygen levels low, their CT scans showing small clots lodged deep within the brain. Their families described the same routine. He always slept with the blanket over his face. She liked to hide under the quilt when the room felt cold. No one ever thought this comforting habit could push the brain into a state of low oxygen that made a stroke not only possible but likely. And the danger grows even worse for seniors with sleep apnea, COPD, heart disease, obesity, or nighttime sedative use. These conditions already reduce oxygen during sleep. Adding a heavy blanket over the head traps even more carbon dioxide, drops oxygen faster, and puts enormous stress on vessels that are already worn from decades of life. This combination is exactly what neurologists fear: thickened blood, unstable circulation, and fragile arteries forced to operate in suffocating conditions. If you are over 60, especially if you live in colder states or grew up sleeping this way, understand this truth clearly. Beneath a blanket, your brain is working harder, not resting deeper. Every minute you stay under that trap of warm, recycled air is a minute the brain is fighting for oxygen. And the older the vessels, the less room there is for error. One night may not harm you, but night after night, year after year, the risk quietly builds until one morning everything changes. If you've ever slept with a blanket over your head, now is the time to stop. Use a sleep mask, adjust room temperature, or switch to breathable bedding, because these small decisions can protect your life. But as dangerous as suffocating your brain under a blanket may be, it still doesn't compare to what happens when seniors fall asleep upright in a recliner, a position that quietly traps blood in the legs and sends clots traveling upward during the night. 4. Sleeping upright in a recliner. Across the United States, millions of older adults turn to the recliner at night, believing it is safer, easier, or simply more comfortable than the bed. Some do it because of back pain, others because breathing feels easier when they're not lying flat. And many seniors, especially after surgery or injury, grow so accustomed to the chair that it slowly becomes their new bed. At first, it feels harmless, even helpful, like a small adjustment in the later years of life. But what most people don't realize is that sleeping upright in a recliner changes the way blood circulates through the entire body, especially through the legs, heart, and brain. And for those over 60 whose veins are weaker, whose blood moves more slowly, and whose vessels have lost elasticity, that change can become dangerous in a way that is rarely talked about but painfully common inside emergency rooms. When the body spends hour after hour sitting at a partial angle, half sitting, half lying, gravity begins to work against you. Blood naturally pools in the lower limbs. The veins in the legs, already stretched from age, must push harder to return blood toward the heart, but in the recliner position, they simply cannot keep up. What starts as mild swelling or heaviness in the legs becomes something far more sinister: stagnation. And stagnant blood is the perfect environment for the formation of deep vein thrombosis, blood clots that build silently overnight without any pain or warning. Once a clot forms in the leg, the danger becomes immediate. All it takes is one movement, one shift in the chair, one stretch upon waking for that clot to break loose. From there, it travels upward with frightening speed, able to lodge in the lungs or the brain. And when it reaches the brain, it triggers strokes that steal speech, vision, balance, and independence in a matter of minutes. I've seen elderly men found slouched in their recliners in the morning, barely able to speak. Women who used to garden and attend church now unable to lift their hands because a clot formed in the night, all because circulation slowed to a crawl while they slept in a chair they believed was safe. And the heartbreaking part is that most of them had no idea they were putting themselves at risk. They felt comfortable, they felt supported. But inside that comfort, the veins in the legs were losing their fight against gravity, and the brain, depending on steady blood flow, was being quietly starved. The recliner also affects breathing more than people expect. When the torso bends forward, even slightly, the diaphragm cannot expand fully. Oxygen intake decreases, and an aging brain, already vulnerable to low oxygen levels, responds by tightening blood vessels, raising blood pressure, and creating unstable circulation throughout the night. This unstable pattern increases the likelihood of clot formation, increases blood viscosity, and magnifies the very risks older adults are trying to avoid. When morning arrives and blood pressure surges, a natural phenomenon in seniors, the stage is set for a clot to move or a fragile vessel to close suddenly. Even seniors who feel they don't move much at night are at risk. In fact, lack of movement is exactly what makes the recliner so dangerous. The body thrives on motion, on shifting pressure, on moments that keep blood flowing. The recliner removes all of that, trapping the body in a stillness the circulatory system cannot withstand for hours at a time. But as alarming as this is, it's not the only sleeping habit that quietly crushes circulation. In fact, one of the most common positions among older adults, sleeping on the right side with an arm tucked under the pillow, places direct pressure on the very arteries that feed the brain. And the danger hidden in that familiar pose is even more unsettling. 5. Sleeping on the right side with the arm under the pillow. For millions of older Americans, this position feels like home. Lying on the right side, curling slightly inward, tucking an arm beneath the pillow, it brings a sense of comfort that has been built over a lifetime. Many seniors describe it as a safe, familiar way to sleep, the posture they've used since they were young. But what the aging body tolerates at 20 is not what it can survive at 70. And this one common habit quietly places enormous strain on the very vessels that keep the brain alive, creating a pathway to stroke that unfolds silently through the night. When you lie on your right side with an arm wedged under the pillow, your body weight presses down on sensitive structures in the shoulder and neck. The arm acts like a lever, tilting the neck at an unnatural angle and compressing the carotid artery, the vessel responsible for carrying the majority of oxygen-rich blood directly into the brain. With age, the carotids become less flexible and more vulnerable to pressure. This compression slows blood traveling upward, and the veins responsible for draining blood downward become pinched as well, trapping blood in the delicate vessels of the head. The flow that should be smooth becomes sluggish. The pressure that should be steady becomes unstable. And in this slowed, congested environment, something dangerous begins to occur. It forms blood clots inside vessels already narrowed by time. These clots develop quietly, fed by stagnant blood that thickens as you sleep, especially if you went to bed slightly dehydrated, a common problem among older adults who avoid nighttime trips to the bathroom. Hours pass. The clot grows. You never feel it forming. Meanwhile, the subclavian artery and brachial plexus of the shoulder are also compressed beneath your weight. The shoulder goes numb, but more importantly, nerve signals to the brain become distorted. This can cause brief arousals you don't remember, episodes where your blood pressure spikes as your body struggles to restore circulation. With every spike, your fragile nighttime balance becomes more disrupted. Then, as morning approaches, the most dangerous moment arrives. Around 4 to 7 a.m., older adults naturally experience a surge in blood pressure, the body's way of preparing to wake. When this surge hits a clot sitting quietly in a narrowed artery, it acts like a hammer on glass. The clot can break free, travel upward within seconds, and lodge in a major artery of the brain. In that instant, it triggers strokes that rob speech, weaken limbs, steal balance, or transform a normal morning into an emergency. Over the years, I have spoken to spouses who describe the same heartbreaking scene. He looked peaceful when I checked on him, but when I tried waking him, he couldn't move his arm. Or, she always slept on her right side with her hand under the pillow, but that morning her face was drooping. These events rarely feel random. The scans show clots lodged exactly where compression restricts blood flow night after night. What makes this position especially dangerous is how deceptive it feels. There is no pain, no warning, nothing dramatic. The body adapts so well to what feels familiar that you never notice the strain beneath the surface. But the aging brain is far less forgiving than it once was. Every hour of restricted blood flow, every night of slowed drainage, every drop in oxygen adds up. The solution is not to fear your bed, but to respect the limits of an older body. If you prefer side sleeping, keep your arm forward or down, never beneath your pillow. Use a supportive pillow that aligns your neck with your spine. A body pillow can prevent shoulder collapse and keep your weight from compressing major vessels. Because if simply resting your arm in the wrong place can endanger your brain, imagine what happens when your entire body begins to toss and turn through the night. Movement that may actually be your brain's desperate cry for help. 6. Frequent tossing and turning, poor sleep quality. There is a kind of restlessness that sneaks into life as we grow older, quiet, persistent, and easy to dismiss. Many seniors in America lie down at night hoping for peace, only to find themselves shifting left, rolling right, waking up, resettling, and never truly sinking into the deep, restorative sleep their brain desperately needs. At first, it seems like a minor annoyance, a normal part of aging, but what most older adults never hear, what even many doctors forget to explain, is that this constant tossing and turning is far more than a nuisance. It is a sign, a warning, a subtle cry from the brain that something is wrong. And for those over 60, it can quietly set the stage for one of the most devastating events a person can face: a stroke during the silent hours of the night. When you shift positions repeatedly, every movement briefly alters blood flow to the brain. In youth, the vessels adapt instantly. But as we age, arteries stiffen, veins lose their flexibility, and the body's ability to regulate cerebral blood flow weakens. These rapid changes in posture, rolling to the side, compressing the neck, turning the head sharply, bending the spine, create momentary drops in perfusion. These drops may last only seconds, but when they happen, hundreds of times throughout the night, the brain experiences a pattern of instability. It never receives the steady, consistent blood flow needed to clear toxins, repair cells, and maintain healthy pressure. Instead, circulation becomes erratic, unpredictable, and fragile. That instability becomes dangerous in several ways. First, poor quality sleep is directly tied to higher nighttime blood pressure. Instead of dipping naturally, as it should, blood pressure spikes repeatedly. These repeated surges place enormous strain on arteries already weakened by years of hypertension or plaque buildup. Second, fragmented sleep disrupts the body's ability to regulate inflammation, causing the inner lining of blood vessels to become irritated and sticky. Sticky vessels are the perfect breeding ground for clot formation. And once it forms blood clots, especially in the carotid arteries or smaller cerebral vessels, the risk skyrockets. The most frightening part is that these clots can sit silently for hours, forming in the early morning when circulation slows and blood thickens from overnight dehydration. Then, with just one sharp movement in the early dawn, a quick roll to the side, a sudden rise from bed, your blood pressure surges. And with that surge, the fragile clot breaks loose. In an instant, it triggers strokes that strike without mercy. Many seniors describe waking up confused, unable to find the right words, or noticing that a hand won't grip or a leg won't respond. These strokes don't feel violent, they feel like being unplugged from your own body. Restlessness is not harmless. It is the body's attempt to correct hidden problems, drops in oxygen, airway collapse, neck compression, blood pressure spikes, or nerve signals firing under stress. When the brain senses danger, it jolts the body awake just long enough to escape it, but not long enough for you to remember. This cycle repeats over and over, creating nights that feel long but leave you exhausted, foggy, and unsteady in the morning. For seniors, the consequences extend far beyond the night. Poor sleep quality increases risk for memory loss, daytime imbalance, heart rhythm problems, and yes, stroke. The brain depends on deep sleep to regulate the cardiovascular system. Without it, pressure rises, vessels become inflamed, and the blood grows thicker and more prone to clotting. But perhaps the most chilling part is this: your body often knows the danger before you do. Morning headaches, daytime sleepiness, sudden dizziness upon waking, numb hands, or short bursts of confusion are early signs that your brain struggled to maintain stable circulation overnight. These symptoms are not just aging, they are warnings that should never be ignored. And if frequent tossing and turning can quietly destabilize the brain throughout the night, imagine what happens when a senior skips their heart or blood pressure medication before bed. A decision that removes the very protection keeping the brain safe while you sleep. If you're still watching and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 1 below to let me know you're here. Now let's keep going with point number 7. 7. Sleeping after skipping blood pressure or heart medication. There is a quiet danger that unfolds in bedrooms across America, not from the way a senior sleeps, but from what they forget to do before drifting off. Every night, millions of older adults miss a dose of their heart or blood pressure medication. Sometimes it's because they're tired. Sometimes because they feel fine and assume one night won't matter. Sometimes it's simple forgetfulness, the kind that comes with age. But what most older Americans don't realize is that a skipped nighttime dose can set off a chain reaction inside the body, one that builds silently in the dark and too often ends with a stroke before morning. Your heart and blood vessels operate on a delicate rhythm, especially after age 60. Blood pressure is supposed to dip at night, giving your arteries time to rest. But if you live with hypertension, atrial fibrillation, carotid disease, or even mild vascular stiffness, your body can't regulate that nighttime rhythm on its own. That's why medications, beta blockers, ACE inhibitors, calcium channel blockers, antiarrhythmics, anticoagulants are prescribed in the first place. They stabilize the system at the exact hours when your brain is at its most vulnerable. When you skip a dose, the protection disappears. Blood pressure begins to rise unpredictably through the night. The heart may beat irregularly, forcing blood to swirl instead of flow. Turbulence develops in arteries already narrowed by age, and in that turbulence, especially in the heart or the neck's major vessels, it forms blood clots, tiny at first, forming quietly as you sleep. These clots wait in the darkness, growing stronger while you remain unaware. Then, in the early morning hours, when blood pressure naturally surges, a surge far more dramatic in seniors, the clot breaks loose. Within seconds, it triggers strokes that damage the brain before you can even open your eyes or call for help. The tragedy is that many seniors don't connect the dots. They believe the stroke came out of nowhere. But it didn't. It came from a night when the body was left unprotected at the exact moment it needed help the most. I've spoken with families devastated by a single forgotten pill, a husband who found his wife unable to speak, a daughter who discovered her father confused and unable to stand. In many of these cases, the medical chart showed the same story. A missed medication dose the night before, rising blood pressure after midnight, an unstable heartbeat, reduced oxygen during sleep, and finally, the clot that ended a chapter of their lives forever. What makes this even more frightening is that older adults are more vulnerable to the consequences of missed doses than any other age group. Their arteries are stiffer, their blood thicker, their heart rhythms more fragile, their hydration lower, and their pressure more reactive. In this age group, stability isn't just helpful, it's life-saving. A single skipped dose disrupts that stability in ways the older body simply cannot compensate for overnight. But there is hope, and it's simple. A small pill organizer, an alarm on a phone, a routine set at the same time every night. A loved one who checks in. These tiny habits build a protective shield around your brain, keeping your vessels calm and your circulation steady every night you sleep. Your medications are not merely prescriptions. They are lifelines, bridges between you and the morning you expect to wake up to. And if skipping one pill can quietly open the door to a stroke, imagine the hidden dangers that come from something even more subtle: the very air around your bed. Because what happens when a senior falls asleep in a cold room with a poorly supported neck is far more alarming and far more common than most people ever suspect. Final wake-up call: protecting your brain begins the moment you lie down. When you reach your 60s, 70s, and beyond, sleep is no longer simply a time to rest. It becomes the most vulnerable, delicate window your brain faces each day. While the world is silent and your eyes are closed, your circulation shifts, your blood pressure fluctuates, and your aging vessels work harder than ever to keep blood moving toward the brain. The truth many older Americans never hear is that nighttime habits matter just as much as daytime choices. The wrong position, the wrong posture, the wrong routine can quietly create the conditions where blood slows, stagnates, thickens, and in the shadows of deep sleep, it forms blood clots that wait for the morning surge to strike. By the time you open your eyes, the damage may already be done. Each position we explored, lying flat without support, sleeping face down, hiding beneath a heavy blanket, spending the night in a recliner, compressing the neck on the right side, tossing through the dark, or missing a single crucial medication may feel harmless. They may feel familiar, comforting, or just something I've always done. But age changes the rules. What your body tolerated at 30 becomes dangerous at 70. Your vessels are not as flexible. Your nerves are more fragile. Your blood is more prone to clotting. Your circulation is slower. Your brain more sensitive, and your heart more dependent on routine. These are not weaknesses. They are simply the biological realities of a long, full life. But the most important truth is this: most sleep-related strokes are preventable. When you elevate your head slightly, keep your neck aligned, choose positions that support healthy blood flow, breathe freely through the night, take medications consistently, and avoid dangerous routines, you give your brain the protection it desperately needs. You guard your speech, your memory, your independence, your ability to walk, think, and live on your own terms. You are not too old to change. You are not too late to learn, and you are not powerless. The choices you make tonight, before you close your eyes, can shape your tomorrow in ways more profound than you realize. If you're ready, I can now help you craft a concise checklist or bedside guide summarizing every safe sleep habit for seniors. Would you like that? These lessons are meant to inspire you to live fully and authentically. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Take a moment to reflect and share one thing you've learned and plan to apply in your own life. Let's support each other on this journey toward embracing these truths. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment with 1. If not, feel free to comment with 0. Your feedback means a lot to us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content like this. Thank you for watching, and here's to living life on your own terms.